Hey, MGTOW, how you doing? So, I had somebody ask me a question. They said, "Sweet Padre, why are you an atheist? And why are MGTOW and being an atheist a perfect combination?" They didn't say it that way, but they asked me why I thought it was a good combination to be MGTOW and to be an atheist. Since I had already expressed my views. So, well, let's just put it like this, man. Um, God never showed up. In the hardest moments of my life, this ghost that's supposedly sitting up at the sky never showed up, right? I mean, I'm not gonna go into sit here and go into details about what the hardest moments of my life are, but I mean, I've seen people, man. I've seen people out there, and they're suffering in those hospitals, out of the sickness or disease or whatever. You know, um, a lot of it they brought to themselves because of poor dietary choices. Right now that we have the science that tells us what to eat, right? Thanks to the electron microscope, we can see what what the blood, what some of the effects are, and some of the effects that these so-called foods have on the bloodstream, right? And people still making the wrong choices. So science has given me answers, and I think science we have to thank science for the answers that it has given humanity, right? And the promises that it holds. It is because of science and reason and logic that we live better lives today, not because some ghost is up in the sky that supposedly controls everything, but it's still a shit show. And when it comes to relationships, right? When it comes to MGTOW, we have to ask, well, if God is in control, why is everything in such a disarray, right? And yeah, some people will blame themselves, right? They'll blame themselves. They'll say, well, God is perfect, but man is not, right? And to that I have to say, well, if God is perfect, weren't we supposedly created in the to resemble God? Weren't we created in the image of God? So that means we should be perfect too. That means there shouldn't be any issues, right? And that means that everything should be fine and dandy. We shouldn't have to deal with abortion, and the ugly sides of relationships. We should not have to deal with having to share a woman with a guy that we don't want to share her with, or her leaving, right? We should not have to deal with imperfect relationships, right? Because supposedly everything was created to perfection, all right? But now we have all these issues, and we still don't blame this ghost that sits up in the sky, right? So that's one thing, but we have to keep in mind that for 2,000 years plus, we've been hearing, at least when in the case of Christianity, right? Because some other religions may be older, but in the case of Christianity, for these past 2,000 years or so, these churches have peddled all kinds of nirvana, right? They've said, well, of course they made up the story of Adam and Eve and how how we came to the world, how the earth was created. Supposedly man was created in the image of God, right? But somehow we weren't perfect, right? and somehow God created this woman out of man's ribs after he found out that, hey, I kind of fucked up, and I made man, but he's now feeling lonely, so I got to make him a woman. So he didn't make the job, he didn't do the job perfect the first time. And then, of course, woman comes along, according to this story in Genesis in the Bible. Most Bibles, anyways, because there's so many versions of the Bible nowadays that that's kind of confusing. But let's stick to the King James Bible, right? The so-called King James. And this was, of course, at a time when most people could not read, which is another imperfection. Not everyone is able to communicate in the same, with the same level of skill. But so he creates woman, right? And God creates this seemingly perfect woman, but he screws the job up too, because she turns out to be all kinds of things that are undesirable, right? And I'm not even talking about the modern woman and her undesirability. I'm not talking about the woman that is masculine and she's undesirable because of that. I'm talking about just the average feminine looking woman, back from the 1980s or so, or even from prior eras in the Western Western society, Western civilization, right? Yeah, a woman with a crinoline or a woman with a skirt, she's imperfect. She's not perfect. Her personality turned out to be undesirable for most men. And yes, they are the thugs. They are the out there. There always will be some men that find themselves at ease dealing with these beings that we call women. They find themselves at home when interacting with them, and that is because they have similar personalities, right? They have similar views in life. But most of these men, they're incapable of doing what the vast majority of men do, which is we build civilizations. We are builders, we are creators, we are inventors. And it is this mindset of invention and creation that does not allow us to permit a woman into our lives that is bent on destruction, right? And you say, well, sweet padre, but destruction is just another form of creation. Another form of creation. And it's all a cycle, right? The yin yang of things being, put together and taken apart. And we have to wonder, well, did God create woman with the intent of, having her destroy everything that we created, right? Did he create woman to destroy everything that we have created? And if that's the case, then at least from that point of view, things are perfect, right? Because it's all in balance. But it sure as hell doesn't feel as though things are in balance when you spend a lifetime building up your life, building up a civilization, right? Helping put together a civilization and leaving something of value for those who came or who will come behind you, right? Well, I know that did not sound right, but you spend a lifetime building something of value for your loved ones, right? Because they'll follow you, right? Hopefully you'll die before they do, because that's another thing. we have death to deal with, and that's not pleasant. I don't care how you put it. Even for a hardcore atheist like me, it's death is the idea of the absolute finality of death. It's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for most people, and so that's another thing that people tend to give credit for to God, right? That we are alive, that we live, but we live a life that that has meaning only because death is lurking around the corner, and the mystery of it, it's tied to the uncertainty of when are we going to die, right? We don't know. And so, are we going to die when we are young? Are we going to die when we are old? Are we going to die, it's a natural death, or a death due to, what could be labeled an accident, right? And so we have all these things to deal with, and so it's the freedom of men that we're talking about. When we disengage from this idea that there's a supreme being, in the vast emptiness that supposedly controls everything, when we disengage from that idea, it's very it's a very liberating feeling, right? It's very empowering. It's it's you taking the reins of your destiny, right? And saying, well, I know I have limited time on this earth, right? As far as I'm concerned, I know I have limited time on this earth, but I'm gonna make the very best of it. It is up to me to do what I want to do with my life, to go my way. It's not up to some ghost. It's not up to to chance. It's not up to some woman that supposedly he created to give us companion, right? And that turned out to be a horrible person to have beside us, right? A being that brings slavery to us. And so I say, people say they love freedom, right? When I do mean people, I mean men and women. They say they love freedom, but I think what most people want is not freedom. I think what they want is freedom from things that they find unpleasant, right? They want freedom from toil. They want freedom from cold or hunger, and the debilitating effects of that. They want freedom from having to interact negatively with others, right? Freedom from disease, freedom from oppression, freedom from injustice, freedom from death itself. But they don't want freedom for freedom's sake. And the reason why is because freedom demands responsibility. And there's a vast emptiness that it's there, lurking in the shadows, always when you choose to be free, when you choose not to conform to the norms of society. It's that there's that detachment, right? The idea that you don't belong, that you don't belong here and you don't belong there, because you've chosen to be free. You have chosen to think different. And while we are in the subject of thinking, we have to say that this is a characteristic of man, and that our thinking, our reasoning, is what makes us free, as opposed to us going at it with blind faith. So that's why I'm MGTOW and atheist, and that's why I think that being an atheist and a MGTOW are the perfect combination, because they talk to me, these two philosophies talk to me about liberation, the liberation of man and his empowerment, self-empowerment, without the need to look up at the sky for answers. Anyways, I want to thank you for listening to this video. If you liked it, if you thought it was interesting, please do give it a thumbs up. Give it a thumbs up. And share and subscribe. And I will catch you in the very next video. Thank you.